everybody, and welcome to another episode of Crushing Comics, where we are back with more of our epic X-Men reread, which we're doing together, Tyler, Fariha, and I. Tyler, an X-Men expert from way back. Fariha is new to this material, although we all came together reading Jonathan Hickman's House of X and Powers of X. This episode, we are talking about only one Uncanny X-Men issue, which is Uncanny X-Men 106. But because this was a fill-in issue, we thought, hey, this is a great opportunity to see what else was Claremont doing around the same time in the Marvel Universe, which also was setting up future X-Men stories. So we're also going to talk about Iron Fist 14, and we're going to talk about Ms. Marvel 9 and 10, and you will hear why when we get there. So spoiler alert, we're going to thoroughly spoil all of these issues. We're going to talk about these characters' histories. We're going to talk about what's in store for them. We may talk about concepts as recent as 29's House of X and Powers of X. Although in these issues, actually there is one specific thing that is going to cause us to talk about House of X and Powers of X. So we'll try to mention when we get there, but be warned, spoilers galore. So that said, Tyler and Fariha, what did you think about this kind of lame duck story in Uncanny X-Men 106, where we leave off on this hot cliffhanger where we just left off the issue before? The X-Men have just gone through the portal to God knows where to follow Lilandra, and Professor Xavier is swooning, and he's like, oh, this reminds me of a time that I harassed the X-Men in a terrible, terrible case of workplace harassment that I continue to perpetuate in my gifted school for youngsters.
I mean, yeah, that you just kind of clarified, like, put that all together. It was like, I don't know, it was like a lot of things. And I feel like this is also like, how fans react to any X-Men changes. Like this kind of capsulated that as well. Like, it's like, oh, you guys gonna be the new X-Men? Well, guess what? The old one were better and stuff. They were not. And, it just like, I don't know. It just same old. I was
but
not
didn't we
happy with
just
it.
do that?
We just did it.
Yeah,
In issue 100. It's like the same beat.
Exactly. And that's one of the reasons I was like, oh, wait, how is this any different than that one? Oh, hold on. Like, they're just like have the old. And the thing is even in this one, Wolverine is the one who figures out that they're not real. Like, it's the same.
It's the same. And it's co-written by Bill Mantlo, and it's almost like Claremont was like, hey, could you just like do some things that feel X-Men-y? And Mantlo's like flipping through issue 100, and he's like, sure.
Like, it just, I don't know.
Well, there are fill-in issues, and there are really fill-in issues. This one is so fill-in that Classic X-Men did not reprint it.
Yeah, it's not even reprinted in class. And there's only maybe 2 other issues I can think of during Claremont's run that are not annuals that are as like totally extraneous as this issue. I think maybe one of them might be 228, if I'm not mistaken. I could be off by 1 or 2, but there's only a few that just feel like totally out of left field the way that this one does, especially because this story is actually inserted after Uncanny X-Men 96. It's basically just like in that interminable period of training that they have between the thing with the Ngari Demon in 96 and then 97. And they're just like training, and every single time I read this issue, I think, oh, maybe it's Mimic. Every time. And I get all excited that Claremont's going to write a Mimic story. And then at the end of the issue, it's just Professor X's mean alter ego, a.k.a. Professor X. Which is funny to me because it goes to show that not every Claremont subplot was a slam dunk. Like, he does come back to this once or twice, but like this just never really materializes. Almost, I don't know if does this get connected to Onslaught later, Tyler? This idea of Professor X having like a bad psychic echo?
Yeah, I'm not sure because like 90s X-Men events seldom, well, I would not say never, but like they seldom tie in like all the way back to this era. Like, the latter eras of Claremont, yes, they do. But like this early part, I don't think they do.
Well, I think it does, when I looked it up online, it does say, see also Onslaught. So I guess we'll get there. I actually don't know Onslaught that well because it's what caused me to quit comic books. If your enthusiastic reception of the show continues to get us to read comics all the way to X-Men 330, you will have your work cut out for you. Then you can make Tyler and I read Onslaught. And who knows what'll happen. Maybe Fariha will love it. But in any event, so we're not here to tell you if the entity, which is Charles Xavier's bad alter ego is the same as Onslaught or not. You'll just have to stay tuned in to find out. So as
you were talking, I was actually flipping through the issues twice already, and honestly, I don't have anything to say or
I've
anything to even bring.
3 mirror moments to highlight here. So the first is when Professor X is swooning in Misty Knight's arms, and what is it like to swoon in Misty Knight's arms? Apparently the same as swooning in Moira McTaggart's arms, although they're both wearing pink. I guess all women, you know, are just his nursemaids to him, whether they're a badass New York cop or a super scientist on her 10th life. Spoilers. And the thing that makes me laugh right after that, because again, I think Hickman really did his homework with House of X, Powers of X. Moira says, even after all these years, part of me loves you still. And I'm like, we're talking about a lot of years at this point in House of X, Powers of X. Even 900 years later, I'm still at this asshole's bedside.
And that's what I was saying though, like, you know, because all those years can be interpreted into so many different ways. Now that we know Hoxpox, it's a complete different meaning versus when it was like first before. But then once again, I think we talked about it at some point, either on this channel or somewhere else. Why are all these women falling for these boring men? Like, why?
I mean,
if
you had to say what one man on the X-Men cast, and I'll open the forum to everyone here, is worth swooning over at this point. Is there one? Is there a man that's worth it?
Well, Tyler will probably say Colossus. I know that.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
Yeah, I mean, Colossus is probably the nicest one, you know.
Yeah, I mean,
so when you say at this point, you just mean this cast, right? We're not
this cast as we know them so far, because some of them will turn into better characters.
Yeah, definitely.
I think Nightcrawler is swoon worthy already. Do you not? No? I mean, he's so charming.
He is charming, but he also has like so much like, you know, baggage with him about his looks and stuff, and I don't want to carry those. But you know, I think like Colossus probably comes close. So you know, but everyone else, I'm like, ugh, ladies.
I guess I feel like Claremont writes Colossus like so naive, and you can feel how young he's being written here, where he's like he acts rashly, not in like a Wolverine way, but rashly just in the way of somebody who hasn't had that much life experience. And Nightcrawler to me just like strikes this middle ground here, where it's clearly that he's lived some stuff, but he has a level of optimism that like Cyclops and Wolverine don't have. And to me, that's really compelling. Like if I had to pick one of them at this point in the run that I would hang out with, and I have to pick from the boys and can't hang out with Storm, I would probably want to hang out with Nightcrawler. But that's just me. So you would hang out with Colossus, both of you.
Oh yeah.
Well, you say hang. We mean something different.
Okay.
Tyler and I mean something different. You're talking differently than we are talking. Yeah.
What?
So we would pick Colossus in that sense. Separately, not together.
Well, that was my first point of discussion. So my second one is we once again, Claremont and Mantlo here, very consistent. Who's the one X-Men who can tell Wolverine to F off? It is Storm. Because as he's getting into yet another fight with Cyclops here, Storm has this wonderful panel, and she's drawn in a very Cockrum way, although I don't think it's Cockrum drawing at this point in the issue. And she said, great line, and perhaps you should be silent, Wolverine. Some of us are weary of hearing your gravelly little voice hour after endless hour.
Yeah.
So, and to that point, how many times Storm's had to say this to Wolverine? Like, does he really, because we know that Wolverine has memory issues. The memory issue seems to be like really concerning because he keeps on forgetting it. And Storm has to keep on reminding him. So I don't know, maybe because of the timing of it, maybe this was one of the first times, and then since then he backed off, but yeah.
This is probably the first, maybe the second time.
Well, first chronologically, because I think the first one was after. Yeah. Oh no! Actually, it was during the Gary Demon fight. Right.
Yeah. So this is the second time, maybe. Yeah. But the other thing also is like,
it's not that bad.
Wolverine's claws, like, magically grow like super long in one panel, where he slices off like Iceman's slice. Like the claws is like the length of his forearms.
Oh, really?
But then also the resolution of this is that Professor X just like conjured this stuff from his mind, but it's awfully physical. Like I never can decide if it's meant to be like a combination of the Danger Room and these mental images, or if it was all supposed to be in their heads. I don't know. How did the two of you read it?
I read it mostly like it's all in their collective head. Like,
Yeah.
you know, and then I was actually, so here's the thing, that this issue would have been completely different if it's like turned out that they were actually fighting each other. Like then this would have been so much better, that Wolverine was actually like slicing and dicing everyone else. And, you know, like Colossus was like, you know, attacking other people. That would have been so much nicer. But it's
I almost spoiled it for you.
Oh, you did.
So I didn't say anything. So I was like, zip.
Yeah.
No, not saying anything.
So it's not that, or it is that. Ooh, now I'm concerned. But the thing is, also at the same time, it actually shows how powerful Professor X is. Something that we also almost forget, because comic book writers seem to be hell-bent on making sure Professor X is either not available or depowered or not powered, so that...
Or he like all of a sudden gets ethical concerns. In the middle of the fight, he's like, oh, I could put them to sleep, but that's a consent issue. I'm like, really, bro? Compared to all of your constant intercomming directly into people's brains, this is.
But isn't that the problem with like Silver Age X-Men, where he'll be like, X-Men, go do this, and then X-Men will lose, and then in the last panel, last page or something, he will just appear and say, oh, with my powerful mental power, I did this, and they are gone. And it's like, okay, so in the first place, why send the X-Men there?
Because they needed some exercise, you know. But the thing is, I mean, that's kind of like, you know, I was more interested into seeing that, how his power can manifest. Like, and it's like, it's very strong and it's very powerful.
Well, of course, right? I mean, the fact that, of course, Onslaught happened.
So I think the only other thing here is like, I think it does just continue the arc of Wolverine being super ornery, especially because we're really coming up on Byrne coming in and like Wolverine actually having more dimension. I know it just feels like we're getting hit on the head with the same thing over and over again, but at least it's an arc. Because like some of these characters really don't have much of an arc, and at least they've decided that he's going to be the guy that argues with everything. But again, I don't think there's a whole lot else to say, and we wrap this up with Professor X still facing off Firelord, still on the roof. No time has gone by, and we still don't know what happens to the X-Men. We won't know until next issue and next episode for us. But here's where things get interesting. So there are two other issues right now that Claremont is writing. He's writing Iron Fist, and he's writing Ms. Marvel. Claremont has actually been writing the entire Iron Fist series. People, I think, forget this, or they just never know it to begin with, but Claremont took over with the last couple of issues of Iron Fist when he was in Marvel Premiere, and he then he writes the entire original 1975 Iron Fist series. It's collected in 2 Marvel Masterworks. It's connected in its entirety along with all the other material in this epic collection. And even something else that I don't think people usually remember is that Byrne joined Claremont on Marvel Premiere 25, which was the last one before Iron Fist got his solo series. So Byrne and Claremont have put out now 14 comics at this point together. This is their 15th issue together, which means that Byrne has been working with Claremont for more issues than Cockrum has been working with Claremont at this point. So Iron Fist to me is interesting, not only because it introduces Sabretooth, not only because Iron Fist is about to tie in just a little bit with X-Men, but because this is what we're about to get for this upcoming super classic Claremont Byrne period of X-Men. And let me tell you, man, this is a gorgeous issue. I mean, it is pretty. It is. I mean, Cockrum's art is great, but this Byrne art. Whew. Fariha, thoughts on Iron Fist number 14?
So this is my first time seeing Byrne's art.
Yes, maybe.
You know.
I don't know. Did you read any other, John?
It is?
No, it is. I mean, that was a statement, not a question.
Oh,
okay.
You know, so how would you know which one my first?
I don't know.
If I don't tell you.
Yeah, you're like, is this the first time?
No, it is. Oh my God. Okay, so the thing is, like, it is the first time, and to me, like I keep mentioning, I don't necessarily know different art unless it's super different, and I didn't see that it was very different than Cockrum at this point. However, I'll reserve my comment on Byrne's art for later issue of X-Men, because I have some thoughts about that. But the thing is, like, it's also kind of interesting to see Iron Fist, because, you know, I have read Brubaker, Matt Fraction's Iron Fist run, and then also like the follow-up by Tara Andrews, I believe, which did one. So he is like an interesting character to me. Although there's questions about using Asian culture by a white man and all of that. I mean, all that aside, he's still an interesting character, and I never knew that he had this connection with Sabretooth.
Yeah, this is the first canonical appearance of Sabretooth. Other things, of course, many things have been inserted before it, but this was his first appearance in a comic book. Tyler?
I mean, this is the first time I read this issue.
Really? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Surprised.
Well, I mean, I don't have any ways to read it unless it's MU. And the last few times that when I reread the Uncanny X-Men, I just went through the omnibus, so I did not go the digital route. So it didn't occur to me until when we were discussing about doing this podcast video thing that Iron Fist, this run of Iron Fist was drawn and written. I mean, written by Claremont and drawn by Byrne.
Yeah,
so
I mean, I forgot.
That was a surprise to me, and actually, what is more surprising to me here is the inker, which is Dan Green.
Yeah, usually it's Terry Austin and John Byrne.
Yes, and Dan Green on Mark Silvestri is very different from Dan Green on John Byrne. So that kind of like it really struck me. I was like, wait, it's not Terry Austin's ink on this, but Dan Green, and like Dan Green's ink, in my opinion, when he's paired up with Silvestri, is usually not that smooth, and usually not that fluid. Whereas the art here, appears pretty fluid in terms of like the finished art. So I was pretty surprised, but but I enjoyed this, and this is a little bit early Bronze Age for me, in terms of some of the over explanation of Iron Fist like martial arts movement, and then but other than that, I thought it was pretty cool.
I think I love this a lot more than the two of you, based on your opening comments. My note is, I think this is so much better than Uncanny X-Men right now. I don't think there's any issue of X-Men that's been as good as this so far. And I think part of it is me responding to how little time Claremont has with each character in X-Men compared to that he just gets to write Iron Fist. We get so much thought from Iron Fist. We get so many narration moments from Iron Fist that just he feels so much more fully realized in this issue to me than anybody does in the X-Men issues. And I guess like I'm just somebody who really responds to character stuff. And then Byrne's art is just so clean. He has that certain way he draws people with really high cheekbones, like really big balls on the top parts of their cheeks. And he has a certain way he proportions bodies that is just like really familiar once you read a lot of Byrne. Cockrum makes people a little bit thinner, a little bit more lean lined. Byrne's bodies feel a little bit more muscular and like a little bit more made to feel like superheroes. They're a little bit more idealized. And especially for Iron Fist, he just has this beautiful liquid quality to him as he's kicking people, as he's swiveling around and fighting back with his arm. It just has this really lovely liquidity. And we could say a lot about Byrne in the modern day, but you can't really take away how masterful he is at this point. At least I don't think so, but we can all have different opinions on that. But there's a couple of interesting Claremont moments here. First of all, Sabretooth is right from his third panel, violence against women. Let's get it in nice and early and establish that Sabretooth this is his theme.
Yeah. So the thing is, to that point though, I wasn't necessarily looking at it in terms of like he's an awful character.
Yeah, he's just bad. He's a freebooter.
Yeah, he's awful. So the thing is like, so I didn't quite necessarily look at it as like violence against women. It's just mostly just violent nature. But the thing is, the whole time I was very worried for Colin. Like, I was very worried. I'm like, where is this going? I don't like this, But then the thing is, I also had a little bit of trust on Paramount, and thankfully it didn't quite go to that direction, But the thing is, like, it was, and I think like too. Is Colin supposed to be Asian?
She is.
Okay.
She's not drawn Asian, yeah.
Yeah, she's not.
Yeah, she's not.
A lot of judgment coming from Fariha.
Yeah, I mean, like two Asian of the panel. Like,
but to be fair, I don't think a lot of artists in American comics draw Asians that looks like Asians.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they just have Asian's name, and they
Right.
just have some Asian traits, but
Or they rely
really,
on the coloring, especially at that point, to make them look
Yeah.
what their concept of Asian was, which was awful.
Yeah,
And they really didn't do anything with their features to make them look
No.
Asian, which honestly
Yeah.
is how a lot of people draw Storm. Storm
Yeah.
definitely doesn't necessarily just look Caucasian, but it's not like they're drawing her as a black woman. They're just drawing
No.
her with exotic features and then coloring her a dark color.
Right.
except for Dotterman
Yeah, well, I'm talking about at the, and
at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing also is that I think Bob predates Wolverine. so I think at this point in time, Wolverine has not used Bob a lot.
No, he has.
But not a lot.
Not a lot, but
constantly.
Sabretooth like bubs right through
Yeah,
this. Claremont's
thing.
hitting us over the head with this, like they're similar.
they're similar.
Oh, is that why Wolverine, like Sabretooth, is after Wolverine because he stole Bob?
No. there is a story there, but it's not the Bob story. It's something else. But I don't want to spoil it for you. I mean, you sort of read a little bit of it in the classic X-Men backup story early on, but it will come to the forefront later on.
Yeah, well, Sabretooth is a character that should go away. I would say, and like we don't want to spoil it.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, it's just like that character should just go away.
Yeah, you almost want to just fall into a deep dark hole. But I will say that this is a real. I think it's a good fight. Like I really feel peril for Iron Fist. Like he seems like Sabretooth is going to overwhelm him. And even as hokey as it may be, we have to remember the era here. He kind of is like, no, I have to use my special martial arts powers to be able to fight because I'm blinded. And then he's able to take out Sabretooth, who really comes across as like a real compelling threat. He actually seems a lot more threatening to me here than Wolverine usually comes off so far in X-Men.
Mm-hmm.
He seems really
of the height.
The height difference. He's big, and he's got this big mane, and he's got his big fur on his arms. He's just an imposing figure here.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he killed that lion to get that. It looks like it, but the thing is, like, also we have to talk about the mind meld that happened between Colin and Danny.
Oh, let's talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then because of that, they can share power. They can share, like, memories and stuff like this.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know. That seems like a very, like,
intrusive.
Yeah, not just intrusive, but intimate. A lot. Yeah, it's intimate. It's a lot. And then at the time, he's also like dating Misty Knight. So, but then he has this other platon. I'm like, yeah. And to be honest, I did appreciate it. I'm like, go platonic friendship. I mean, I don't know where it goes from there, whether two of them becomes an item. But I was like, hey, that's kind of neat. Like two of them just doing things together and, melding minds, and Misty's okay with it.
Well, and Claremont loves his ultimate intimacy, right? This is another one of those Claremont tropes that you'll see. Like he loves to be like, and then they shared the ultimate intimacy. He loves that.
That was so creepy. Like
no.
Not just the way you like, not because the way you said it, but because the trope itself.
Yeah.
No. Well, it depends on who you use it on. So, I think in some cases it's not that bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just point out to me when we get there.
Yeah, we will get there. We'll get there. And then, I mean, the other thing I sort of want to point out is like the there's this page where Byrne designed the flashback and the current, that small sliver. And I thought it was quite brilliant. Like when he was trying to remember his teachings, okay, I'm blindfolded. I got to rely on my senses. And then it just goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
And Byrne just does a lot of really interesting paneling in general here. He does a lot of really cool vertical sliced panels that shows the motion almost in like a flip book style. The one I really like is Iron Fist is heating up the Iron Fist, and then it's closer, but then we're like tight on his face, but you can almost still feel that he's like getting closer to you and that's why we're so tight on his face. And then we cut wide to kind of see what happened. And I think it's really clever, and Byrne really uses paneling to control the pace here. I do want to point out one other thing. Great Claremont Claremont line early on the issue, women aren't objects or goddesses, we're people with minds, feelings, and spirits all our own, which Claremont could sometimes use a reminder of that as the X-Men run continues. But it's a nice line that he came up with. We're not objects or goddesses. He'll often
So at
need
this
that reminder.
point, Claremont is firmly the writer, right? In this run.
Yeah, he wrote the entire run. Claremont writes every issue of Iron Fist 1 through 15.
And
I've never read the whole thing. I've only ever read this issue and issue 15. So I have it all right here in my hand.
I believe so.
So
I believe he
wanna
wrote
read
everything.
He did. He didn't write all of Iron Fist. Iron Fist at an earlier point is written by a few different kind of Marvel 70s people. He's written by Doug Munch. He's written by, he's originally created by, planned and plotted and polished by Roy Thomas. So he goes through the whole 70s bullpen before Claremont takes him over.
Got it.
To be honest, a good Iron Fist is like Ed Brubaker and Matt Fraction run. It's
Well, you don't know that. You haven't read this whole thing yet. It might be wonderful.
Okay, fine.
But the Brubaker Iron Fist is actually amazing.
The other thing that surprised me, because I've never read this part of Marvel Universe before, was like, oh, Jerry Hogarth is a guy?
Right, because if you watch the Marvel show, if you watch the Netflix shows, it's a woman.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, what?
Yeah, that was a whole thing, you know, when the show started and stuff like that. I know a lot about this side of Marvel, so ask me questions. Well, to be honest, post 2000.
Post 2000.
Yeah, post 2000.
So Iron Fist 15, the next issue, actually has the X-Men in it, and we'll talk about it ever so briefly in our next episode because it follows directly from our next two X-Men issues. But we have one more story to talk about here, and if you choose not to, that would be fine because I think it's on the lesser side of the Claremontian spectrum, but that's Miss Marvel, which is Carol Danvers, who we know today is Captain Marvel, issues 9 and 10. So Claremont took over writing this issue since this comic since issue 3, and this is another character that many people forget. Claremont pretty much single-handedly created all of the background and tropes for after he was handed the character created by somebody else. So he shapes a lot of the early framework for who Miss Marvel is, who Carol Danvers is, and he's with Keith Pollard on art in number 9 and Sal Buscema on art in number 10. And the reason we're talking about them is because he introduces Deathbird here. And even though Deathbird never comes right out and says, "I'm Shi'ar, my sister's Lilandra," even though she never comes out and says it, Claremont's clearly got some plans. Deathbird keeps going on about how she's firstborn of the Aerie. She says she's cursed with a murderous fury. I mean, there's a lot of not only Claremontian themes, but I think just as he knew Sabretooth clearly had to do with Wolverine, I think he knows here that Deathbird clearly has to do with the Shi'ar stuff he's doing in X-Men. Of course, nobody at the time would be any the wiser, but like there's this whole Claremont shared universe going on between these three books right under our noses in the late 1970s, and people forget that these other books were where these characters came from. Mystique also debuts in Miss Marvel.
Yeah, there's a throwaway line, I think, later, not in any of the X-Men issues we have read so far, but I think there's a throwaway line where Lilandra briefly mentioned that she has a sister or something like that. And when we get to those issues, we can talk about that. But he definitely planted those seeds everywhere in books that he wrote. That's for sure.
I also wanted to mention that Miss Marvel was created by Jerry Conway, the same creator of Punisher.
Yes. Jerry Conway, I think along with his wife, I want to say. I know he like specially thanks her at the beginning. Maybe I'm making that up. But I'm misstating my Miss Marvel history.
No, but the thing is that he wrote a very kind of nice thing about how Katie Sue DeConnick kind of came up to him and then asked for his autograph on one of the Miss Marvel, but he couldn't believe that she's like, you know, because she has done so much for that character since then. And then, you know, he was talking about that, how it was very strange to write that as a man, you know, something like he was pretty much given an assignment, write something feminist. And, you know, that was pretty much
it literally, Free is not exaggerating in the slightest. And in the first page of the first issue, next to his name, there is an asterisk, and it says, "with more than a little aid and abetment from Carla Conway." So even at that time, Jerry Conway, by the way, still an amazing writer to this day. If he puts out a comic book, it will be good. You can pick it up. It's great. And I love that, like, even in the 70s, he was great enough to have the wherewithal to be like, I should not be writing this comic book by myself. And actually to credit his wife instead of just saying like in an interview somewhere like, oh, by the way, my wife chipped in, like she's on the credits page. I think that's pretty cool. But he's long since gone, and now we're deep into Claremont's run. And like this comic, it's not Iron Fist. I can tell you that. Like it's Carol's on a date, but she's interrupted, but she's already drunk, but there's a burglar in her house, which she senses with her seventh sense, which is not a power we get told about a whole lot with modern Carol. And she's like, I could call the police, or while I'm drunk on this date, let's just leave him behind and go and beat up a burglar. Like it's just, like, there's so many things happening.
It's a whole thing. And also like when she's Miss Marvel, she talks in third person, something that I didn't know.
I totally forgot that.
Like,
there's a whole like Thor, when there was Thor and Donald Blake, and like they were actually separate.
Yeah.
Like that's how Miss Marvel's being played at this point.
Right. And it was also like very like, I don't know. I was bored throughout it. It's like it's just like get to the point. Like, you know, it's just like she goes to the apartment and the apartment is burned down. Then she looks at this photograph that was taken at some point, and then she's upset about that photograph is destroyed. Why? Who cares?
But it's her and Michael Rossi.
Michael Rossi.
Yeah, who the hell is Michael Rossi? I don't know.
Tyler, did you bring some receipts?
We talked about it last episode, I think. That's the guy who went to Stephen Lang and told Stephen Lang, say no, Project Armageddon has to stop. And then he flew off. Yeah.
And then
be still my heart. Okay.
And then in the backup story where you see Emma
is taking care of him. Okay.
Yeah, he's injured. So there's one. He appears randomly throughout Claremont's run.
Yeah, it just sounded like, you know, she had a one night stand with him, and he's like, you know, super upset about the picture getting burned. I was like, okay. The thing is that there is a lot of, I felt like it felt compared to other like other Claremont things we have read so far, because he had like different characters that he's bouncing off, and then but this is like just only one character, and
she really is no one other than at the magazine. And it's not, I actually like the magazine stuff the best, because when she's a hero there's just nothing happening.
Right, so there's nothing happening. I don't know what like, you know, kind of directive that these Marvel writers were under, because it was like very dumb. I mean, it just like nothing, no non-issue that she's fighting. And then I was not quite sure. It's like, oh, just like, I don't know how to quite explain it, because it felt like, oh, she's just fighting this because she's a woman. At one point she had women written on her shirt. Then I later realized that's the newspaper that she's an editor for. So it's like that. But I don't know, that whole thing. And then she also went shopping for all places. I'm like, wow,
this shopping mall might be where MODOK's base is.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just funny to me, because Claremont like is writing women so well in both of these other two titles, for, you know, and then here he has a woman who luckily over time has been made into one of the most iconic Marvel heroes, and like it's just, there's like no magic whatsoever to it.
No.
Deathbird looks pretty visually cool. She's pretty fierce. Like I actually buy her as like a pretty cool villain, but then she's like working for MODOK, who even at the time is made out to be the most like ridiculous. He's got no plan. He's actually not very much of a threat. He's just like persistently annoying. He's that guy. He's Chad. He's giant Chad in a chair.
Right. So MODOK has been completely ruined in air quote. He's actually a pretty funny character from like Secret Avengers, and then also Gwenpool. Like I can't take him seriously as a villain. So the thing is, it's just like, oh, AIM, and it's AIM's gonna be under, like, I'm like, why are they under a mall? I mean, if any other thing, it would be under some like, you know, abandoned warehouse or some factory or something. Just because she's a girl, that it's a mall,
and she knows, she's like, I have to be careful at this mall. They're gonna spot me.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I took issues with that. And then the thing is, like, she's like, oh, MODOK knows my face, but I still can turn into Miss Marvel here. I'm like, girl, please.
Well, it also kind of felt like how Claremont's churning out these single issue stories with this huge cast of X-Men, like that Magneto fight, where, like, you know, and even though we have complaints that the fights feel the same because every character only has a couple panels, he's like blowing through plot. But here he just like languorously stretches out across 2 issues to resolve this Deathbird thing. And it's just, yeah. So look, I do love classic Miss Marvel for many reasons. I like it because it establishes her as a character. I like it because it's unique relatively for Marvel in the way that she's a leading character alongside She-Hulk and Spider-Woman, which were all coming out at the same time. But if you want to dig into a Ms. Marvel issue that's going to really feel like a meaty read, I just don't know that issues 9 or 10 are those. The art is actually quite nice. I do like all the stuff with her as the editor of the magazine. I love that we're trying to get like a little bit of the Spider-Man vibe of like the who she is by day. And I did like there's this big dig in there where she gets this intern and the intern's like, yeah, I read your book. It was boring. And so I guess I'm going to like intern with your stupid feminist magazine now. And Carol's like, thanks. That's great. But because I think it actually portrays the idea that people did like turn their noses up at magazines at the time. This is clearly being modeled off of, I think, Ms. magazine of the time, that some women like wanted no part of it. And I think that those moments are actually the moments about this that are charming. And like the MODOK Deathbird moments to me are just like, okay, great.
Yeah.
And also like the character has come so far from that.
Yeah.
Like it just doesn't make any more sense
And
to read
surprisingly, Claremont was the one who brought her quite far. Later on.
Yeah, but then the thing is like it's from there it went even further.
I know.
Like, like it just like it's equivalent of talking to 16-year-old Tyler versus now Tyler. Like, I mean, I'm pretty sure 5-year-old Tyler did a lot of work to get to 16-year-old Tyler, but the now Tyler is so much better version, I'm thinking, from the 16-year-old. So it's like, why am I reading 16-year-old Tyler's life? I want to talk about current Tyler's life. Like, that's what it felt like. Like it just like so much has changed. And I don't think like even in her current run, like, the fact that she was an editor is actually often forgotten or dropped. Like it's completely like she was in the army and then like Air Force and then go there. Like, so it just, I only know that she was even an editor because of a Ms. Marvel generation issue. That's where I know it from. So,
Well, it's also like a radical shift for the character that they were trying to figure out like what she would be able to do in her own book, because she had already been introduced and had starred in many issues of Captain Marvel back when he was Captain Marvel, and she was an army officer and she did like security. So it's kind of weird to be like, we're launching her on this in her own book. We've got this cool character, this woman who's an army officer. I know, let's have her edit a magazine. Like it's like, why would you do that? I'm sure we could get into it. So look, I still love the series, but I think just in the scope of recommending X-Men related reads to you, we cannot in good conscience tell you to go buy this epic collection just for Deathbird. But here she is, she's Deathbird, she's here, and she's got feathers due to her atavistic, that's a great word, throwback to the earlier time of the Shi'ar, even if no Shi'ar stuff is mentioned here. So that's our 3 for today. Any closing remarks on Claremont's 2 side projects here while he's pushing the X-Men story forward?
Not really.
Well, look, me being the completist that I am, like I kind of want to read all of Iron Fist now, because I didn't realize it was
Iron Fist too.
And I will read all of Ms. Marvel, even if I have to drag somebody kicking and screaming with me to do it. So these maybe could wind up fuller reads later on, not just in their excerpted X-Men comic. Especially, as Tyler points out, Carol Danvers kind of becomes an X-Men character for quite some time. Fariha, you will be delighted, because we get a lot of Carol Danvers content in the X-Men run as it goes on. Yeah, which is why I love her.
And also when she was part of, Rogue.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Well, that was our issue for today, or our issues in our episode for today. We're going to get back to the main line of Uncanny X-Men in the next episode. We're going to read Uncanny X-Men 107 and 108, which will also be paired with classic X-Men 14 and 15, although those stories could have been read much earlier, but they're paired with those issues and they help inform them. So we're going to read the backups and the revisions now. Also, of note, Iron Fist 15 is pretty much Uncanny X-Men 108.5. So we are going to just briefly skim Iron Fist 15 and pull out a couple of things for you. You can just, it's not critical. It's just kind of like a fun, casual moment. So if you're really trying to keep up with the full X-Men reading experience, you should also read Iron Fist 15 with that next group of issues. And the reason we're doing this to begin with is because Tyler and I have read this on our own. Fariha could sit down and read this on her own. But when it comes to X-Men, what is the case, Fariha?
X-Men is better when it's read together.
That's right. So we want to thank you so much for reading with us. And we hope that you're going to continue to subscribe, continue to comment, and tell us what you love or didn't love about these issues and these episodes. And we will see you next time for more Epic X-Men Reread on Crushing Comics. So everybody, please be well, and thank you so much.
Bye.